Logan Paul is now being investigated by the FBI. Turns out he's been trying to pretend that he doesn't know what's going on, and his lawyer is coming up with possibly the worst arguments humanly possible and kind of tanking his case for him. Apparently, CoffeeZilla is also friendly with the government, and the SEC is thanking him for reporting these people. Now, quick recap for people who don't follow the story. A while back, CoffeeZilla exposed Logan Paul for his crypto scams with a very popular YouTube series. And Logan Paul did the logical thing and, instead of just paying back the victims from CryptoZoo, the people that he actually scammed, he decided to sue CoffeeZilla for defamation, insisting that he is not a scammer. Okay, so since then, Logan Paul's scummy text messages also got leaked, basically showing that he was not suing CoffeeZilla because he thought he was defamed, but actually because he's a self-proclaimed petty billionaire who just wanted to ruin his life.
Paul also admitted that he's suing him just to make his life difficult. And he says Zilla will pay one way or another. I'll make sure of it. Bro, you're a billionaire. Paul responds with a petty billionaire.
I wonder how the jury is going to react to that one.
Paul says, I want people who wronged me to suffer while I continue getting wins on their grave.
Ooh, no way Logan is using the word grave after the Japan forest incident. And that brings us to today. Logan Paul filed a motion of confidentiality trying to hide some sort of information that was very humiliating and embarrassing for him. But unfortunately for him, that information has actually come to light now. Shout out to YouTuber Legal Bites for this video, and let's just go over the whole story. Alrighty, subscribe or your kids have to eat lunch late for the rest of their lives. And let's begin with this video of Logan panicking about worse evidence getting out.
This information, Paul says, should remain confidential because it's too harmful and embarrassing to Paul. So in other words, forget about those scummy texts that we just saw. If you thought those made him look bad, it sounds like Logan Paul is way more worried about this information. He might end up being the one responsible for making this evidence public in the first place.
Yeah, Logan Paul just doesn't understand the Streisand effect. You cannot silence people like this. You can't silence a story like this. And you can't try to hide this information because it's always going to come back to bite you. Especially when you are the one who tried to sue someone here. Obviously, all of your scummy bullshit is going to come out in discovery because that's just part of the legal process. And he kind of screwed himself the second he tried to file this motion for confidentiality.
And so we really wouldn't have known that there was anything in here that Paul was really afraid of getting out. That is, until Logan Paul filed his motion to preserve confidentiality designations.
So it turns out the thing that's worse than the scummy text messages is that he's being investigated by the FBI and the SEC. And you're kind of cooked when the three-letter organizations are starting to investigate you.
Now we know that the evidence he desperately tried to keep secret was in fact a number of federal investigations by the SEC and FBI into the whole CryptoZoo team, including Logan Paul.
You told me I couldn't say anything because Eddie was being investigated by the FBI and that was confidential information. It's all over the internet. I've been let on for a year, bro. I've also asked you to audit the contract for the game and see where the money went so many times, and that never happened either. Do you see how this looks?
I see how it looks.
What did you do?
Tried to help to get the project done. That's all I did.
I think there's a piece of information being left out.
Yeah, I wonder who would leave out information here. This is hilarious. Logan having to pretend like he doesn't know what's going on. Yeah, guys, it's actually my team that did all the bad stuff. Everything that was remotely scummy or illegal or anything that involved a scam was just my team, guys. Nothing to do with me. I mean, look at me. I'm good guy Logan. I'm scolding my team over here. That probably means I'm innocent, right? I'm being so mean to them. I'm confronting them on the phone. And I love how he tries to say that his team is being investigated. Bro, you are also being investigated. You are this project. Your name was on it. You were promoting it. You definitely knew what was going on. And it's just so pathetic that it's even come to this. You couldn't just take accountability and pay back the CryptoZoo victims. You were bragging about making millions of dollars a day. And that's literally just how much you had to pay the CryptoZoo victims. I mean, let's not forget, this guy literally apologized and then did a complete 180. He decided that his ego was way too important and he just didn't bother following through with any of his promises. Then we learned that Coffee's actually the one who whistleblew to the FBI and the SEC.
Okay. Well, there's no information that I'm not telling you.
But now we've learned that Logan Paul himself was and is currently being investigated for allegedly defrauding CryptoZoo investors. And what's more, we now learned the identity of the whistleblower. Who else but CoffeeZilla himself?
Bro, Coffee is actually such a legend for this. And this is kind of the reason you know that Coffee was genuine in his intentions when he was exposing Logan Paul. Because he didn't just make a YouTube video about it trying to get some quick views. He actually reported him to the FBI and the SEC. And he was actually trying to get legitimate justice and not just some weird attempt at defaming him. So now we get a bit of the timeline here. Basically, Coffee wants to combine the case of Logan suing him and CryptoZoo investors suing Logan. Because both of those cases hinge on the same facts, right? Whether or not Logan is actually a scammer. And essentially, Logan is just crying to the court like, oh, this FBI investigation is not that important and Coffee is just trying to embarrass me in the public.
First, there's CoffeeZilla's motion to transfer, which is where he's asking the court to transfer this case from San Antonio to Austin so it can be litigated closer to the CryptoZoo class action case. Paul filed a motion to preserve confidentiality. That's the motion that told all of us that Logan Paul was panicking over this evidence getting out. In it, Paul pointed all kinds of fingers at CoffeeZilla, claiming that he included those sealed exhibits in his motion to transfer for no legitimate reason, and that he did it just to harm and embarrass Paul to the court.
Really? You think Coffee would risk his entire life and reputation just to embarrass Logan Paul? I mean, if he just wanted to humiliate and embarrass him, he would just talk about this publicly. The fact that we had to literally find this information out through some weird legal documents and a lawyer YouTuber covering the story means that he wasn't trying to humiliate Logan at all. And frankly, I don't think Coffee needs to embarrass Logan at all. This guy's reputation is already in the gutter. There's not much more he could possibly do. He'd probably have to go to Japan and film another dead body. That would probably make people hate him more. So pretty dumb argument by Logan in my opinion.
This, Paul says, was by all appearances a deliberate attempt to advance a false narrative to the federal government. Okay, right off the bat, deliberate false accusations to the government come with very serious penalties. So that is a very heavy accusation made by Paul here.
Yeah, apparently everybody is just after Logan Paul. Nobody wants to do legitimate critique. The world revolves around Logan Paul. Everybody's just trying to embarrass him. Dude, get over yourself. You're not that important. And the thing is, he's not even important to Coffee because apparently Coffee does this stuff all the time. He whistleblows a lot of people to these organizations and some of them actually end up getting arrested as well. So he's basically the local janitor just taking the trash out and giving pieces of shit like Logan what they deserve. And don't get me wrong, it takes a long while, but eventually karma does find its way. Now this next part, Logan's lawyers deliver possibly the worst argument ever.
The reason that Findeisen misled the government so brazenly, of course, was that his goal was to prompt the government to investigate and build cases against plaintiffs specifically, whom he had never even spoken to about the project, in order to further harm plaintiff and, he hoped, ultimately claim credit and raise his own profile in the event the investigations resulted in criminal charges or civil penalties against him. And basically what he's getting at is Paul claims that CoffeeZilla didn't give the government any information about any other bad actors on the CryptoZoo team, like Eddie Ibanez and Jake Greenbaum. And he says that because of that, CoffeeZilla was sending the government down this rabbit hole to focus specifically on Logan Paul and to ignore everyone else on the CryptoZoo team.
So real quick, just going over this part again, in order to further harm plaintiff, and he hoped that ultimately he'll claim credit and raise his own profile in the event the investigations resulted in criminal charges or civil penalties against him. So this clown is actually saying that CoffeeZilla reported Logan to the government because he wanted to raise his own profile if Logan was found guilty and got criminal charges or civil penalties. So Logan's lawyers are basically admitting like, okay, maybe Logan might be guilty, but Coffee only did this to raise his own reputation and not actually catch Logan in a crime. So they're saying Coffee is not exactly wrong, but his intentions were wrong apparently. Bro, that is the worst argument I've ever seen. Who is this guy's lawyer? My God. Put that meme, this is my lawyer, I'm cooked, boys. This is embarrassing. You're literally throwing your own client under the bus. Now, the person who made this video, Legal Bites, is a lawyer too, right? And she talks about how she didn't even make this video for a long time because she wanted to make sure she got Logan's argument properly because Logan's side was so stupid that it literally did not make any sense and she was so confused.
I may or may not have been sitting on this video a little bit longer than I should have rather than moving forward to publish it, in part because I've been trying to wrap my mind around this argument. Throughout my career as a litigator, I have often found myself in moments of pause when reading someone else's legal arguments that don't quite click for me. And the dilemma always is, am I just not understanding the other side's argument? Am I maybe clouded by something like bias maybe that's keeping me from seeing the other side clearly? Or does this argument just really suck that bad? But anyway, all of that is to say, I think I've landed in the place that this argument by Logan Paul, where he says that CoffeeZilla misled the government and essentially did it for clicks and to claim credit in the event the investigations resulted in criminal charges, is just a really bad argument. Like, I'm sorry, but to me, it just does not make sense. Setting aside the fact that CoffeeZilla showed in response that he did, in fact, provide a bunch of information to the FBI about the entire CryptoZoo team and that this included information about Jake Greenbaum and Eddie Ibanez, even if he didn't send that information to those guys, why would the government not look into the activities of the entire team if they suspected that even just one member of the team had maybe defrauded investors?
Logan hired his lawyers off Temu, bro. Dude, can you imagine that your lawyer's argument sounds so incredibly stupid that other lawyers look at it and don't even believe it's real because it just sounds that dumb? Also, the other argument is even more funny. Basically, Logan was saying that Coffee only reported him to the FBI and not his team so that they would only charge Logan with a crime. First off, that is completely brain dead. We literally just saw proof that Coffee reported the other people as well. And hypothetically, even if he only reported Logan, of course they would be investigating the whole project and every member of the team that was involved, right? Just because you only have information on one person doesn't mean you're trying to exonerate the rest of his team. But I just love how their defense is, no, not I didn't commit the crime. It's Coffee is reporting me for the wrong reasons and he just wants to get social media likes and not actually put me in prison. How pathetic can you actually be, bro? Now, after this, she talks about how Logan is screwed either way because his argument just doesn't make sense. Because the only way Coffee would be able to raise his reputation by reporting Logan to the FBI was if Logan actually was a criminal and there was merit to his case. So basically, if Coffee reported Logan to the FBI and nothing actually came out of it, and Logan is completely innocent, then Coffee's reputation would actually go down for having a false flag, for basically getting the story wrong, right? His reputation would lower. So the only way to actually raise his reputation is being right about Logan.
If CoffeeZilla misled the government when he presented a whistleblower claim about CryptoZoo, how would that result in criminal charges? In order to get to the stage of criminal charges or civil penalties that he supposedly wants to be thanked for, according to this argument, there has to be enough legitimacy in CoffeeZilla's whistleblower complaint to get to that result. And that would mean that whatever was in CoffeeZilla's whistleblower complaint was not misleading the government. And importantly, to the defamation claims ultimately in question here in this case, that would also mean that CoffeeZilla reasonably believed that Logan Paul and the others defrauded the public or defrauded their investors with CryptoZoo. To put it another way, for CoffeeZilla to receive accolades from the public over Logan Paul getting charged, there has to be fire to all that smoke. So how does that make sense for CoffeeZilla to think, I'm going to mislead the SEC and the FBI into investigating Logan Paul specifically, and then when they do find enough to charge him with federal crimes, I'll accept the congratulations for it.
Yeah, you gotta do some crazy mental gymnastics to come to this conclusion. Apparently, Coffee is just 5,000 IQ here, and he's apparently falsely reporting Logan to the FBI and the SEC, which could definitely be a crime of some sort. He's apparently specifically doing this so that they can find no wrongdoing, and that is somehow going to make CoffeeZilla more popular for getting the story wrong in public. Literally makes negative sense. Logan trying to find any way to squirm out of this is just hilarious. Bro, just put the fries in the bag. You're so completely cooked. Now she talks about how Coffee actually reports a lot of these people to these organizations like the FBI and the SEC, and Logan isn't special. He isn't the only one that got reported.
It's public record that CoffeeZilla has been a whistleblower before and continues to be a whistleblower in other cases after CryptoZoo. Specifically, it's common knowledge that he had a strong hand in blowing open the lid about the FTX fraud, and that's a big reason why Sam Bankman-Fried was convicted of a number of federal offenses.
No, actually, that didn't happen. Coffee was just trying to get more subscribers on YouTube, of course. He just wanted my clout, of course. His master plan was actually to put Logan in prison so that he could get a free lifetime supply of Lunchly and Prime. Dude, of course Logan would think everything is about views. He operates his entire life based on views. Keep in mind, this is the same guy who promoted Lunchly at the birth of his child. You can't even make this shit up. Bro is just a sociopath. Now, this next part is absolutely brutal. Coffee actually attached evidence of the SEC thanking him for his comprehensive reports on these people that actually led to multiple arrests, right? So he's friendly with the SEC and probably the FBI too, bro. Coffee is doing God's work here.
And as CoffeeZilla said in a footnote in his response that made me chuckle, to be honest, Logan Paul isn't special to CoffeeZilla. In fact, he says, CoffeeZilla has routinely provided whistleblower reports to the FBI and SEC in the hopes of stopping cryptocurrency scams. While not publicized, CoffeeZilla's reports have led to multiple arrests and guilty pleas. And then he attaches some exhibits showing some of his prior correspondence with someone at the SEC who told him that his reports and some other unrelated matter that he had sent them were found to be very helpful and well done, and that his report to them on the CryptoZoo matter appears to be from the same mold.
So here we got the message from the government official. Thank you for the information collected and synthesized in your report. Procedurally, all tips submitted are reviewed by the office based on a number of factors. If the subjects or conduct relate to an ongoing investigation, the information will be forwarded to the relevant case team. I can't guarantee that will be us in this instance. Personally, I found your reports in the other matter very helpful and well done, and this appears to be from the same mold. So I just wanted to say we appreciate it. Happy to chat anytime. Logan is gonna lose his mind after seeing this. He's like, oh my god, the guy's about to prosecute me or friendly with Coffee, bro. And just so you know, this is relevant to CryptoZoo. We have this other segment here. Just wanted to let you know, guys, I submitted a detailed report on Logan's involvement with CryptoZoo. We got the TLDR, the cryptocurrency, NFTs, 23 million YouTube subscribers. We got all of it. The game which sold millions does not work.
Can you imagine anything worse to Logan Paul, who does appear low-key obsessed with CoffeeZilla, that CoffeeZilla doesn't even consider him to be unique in all of this? Like, in the midst of all of this high-stakes litigation, which has the capacity to ruin CoffeeZilla financially, like, this is legitimately a serious matter and, you know, not fun for CoffeeZilla, obviously. But in the midst of all of that, CoffeeZilla is able to still underhandedly just, like, insult Paul in this way. And the fact that this kind of insult is delivered through a footnote just emphasizes the point that it's not even worth saying in the body of the pleading. Logan Paul just isn't special enough to dedicate that kind of real estate.
That is diabolical. Using a footnote to subtly shit on Logan Paul in a legal setting. Logan just popped a blood vessel reading that. Bro needs to film himself in Japan after this absolute destruction. Now, lucky for Logan, one of the organizations did actually close their investigation. It seems the SEC had this investigation deposed, and this was probably due to them simply handing off the investigation to the FBI. And there was a bunch of events going on, like a recent change in the government as well, where different organizations were given different priorities. So don't get it twisted, the FBI investigation is still ongoing, but Logan is taking any opportunity to take a dub here.
The SEC closed out its investigation, which he argues means they found no wrongdoing, and he says that all other federal investigation is basically dormant and has gone nowhere, which he says means basically the same thing. No wrongdoing. But CoffeeZilla happily goes into detail about what happened with these investigations and obviously has a different take on it. CoffeeZilla submits supplemental information to the SEC and FBI to include a more thorough analysis. And on the same day, Logan Paul receives a subpoena to testify regarding CryptoZoo before a grand jury. And not only that, but the Central District of California issued an amended search warrant for all of Paul's electronic devices for evidence of securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy related to CryptoZoo. And it goes on. Then on March 7th, the SEC subpoenaed Paul for information related to CryptoZoo and other alleged crypto scams Paul has been involved with, including Dink Doink. Then on June 10th, 2024, Paul was deposed in the SEC investigation. Specifically, the SEC decides to scale back its crypto enforcement action and issues closing letters to Logan Paul and many others. The Justice Department is no longer pursuing some crypto cases that they say are better left to other agencies. And apparently, the SEC has actually dropped more than a dozen cases against crypto firms since the change in policy. However, CoffeeZilla says the FBI investigation remains, and he says they continue to express interest in Paul as recently as early 2025. And he says, as far as he knows, this investigation is ongoing.
Yeah, so basically Logan is still being investigated by the FBI. He caught a lucky break with the SEC and immediately said, oh, this means I'm innocent, guys. Even though his own lawyers are basically just admitting he's guilty. I honestly do wish these cases would be handled quicker and wouldn't take literal years to resolve. But unfortunately, that's kind of just how the legal system works. You have to be very thorough to make sure only the guilty people get charged, right? And oftentimes they take a very long time to investigate and then just sort of hit you with all of the charges at once. So Logan is definitely not in the clear in any capacity. In fact, Logan is actually stuck between a rock and a hard place. This next part, she talks about how Logan can't even testify in his own defamation case here because his own words would probably implicate him in the FBI investigation. So bro is just cooked either way.
Because he is the plaintiff, he's the one that brought this case, Logan Paul kind of has to testify in the defamation trial against CoffeeZilla if he's going to be successful. And if the plaintiff doesn't testify at trial, that creates a massive uphill battle for him. And when you look at the scope of what Logan Paul would have to testify about, it absolutely the question of whether he actually defrauded CryptoZoo investors is going to come up. But if he does decide to testify in the defamation case, that is a massive risk because he's opening himself up to questioning that directly implicates potential criminal liability against him. Massive risk. Any lawyer looking at the situation would be waving all the red flags and being like, don't do it. Even if he thinks that he did nothing wrong, there's always a chance that he says something that says otherwise to the feds. And on the other hand, if he does invoke his Fifth Amendment rights and he refuses to testify, he protects himself somewhat on the potential federal criminal case front. But like I said before, he makes it that much harder to actually win this civil case.
So basically, Logan is either going to lose the case against CoffeeZilla, or he's going to try to defend himself by testifying and then implicate himself to the feds. Just lovely. Absolutely lovely. Bro's being cooked on both sides like a well-done hamburger. Bro can't even defend himself in court without the FBI sniffing up his cheeks. But it doesn't end there. He's even more screwed because if Logan chooses to not testify to avoid saying something that would implicate him to the feds, he's screwed even more because that means he's afraid of getting caught, which is obviously a point in favor of Coffee because that means even Coffee would have reasonably thought that Logan did something wrong.
He also wins if he can show to the jury that at the time that he made these allegedly defamatory statements, CoffeeZilla reasonably believed that Logan Paul had actually defrauded the CryptoZoo investors. And if you think about it, if Logan Paul invokes the Fifth Amendment, he is saying that he has a reasonable concern that his statements could incriminate him when talking about the CryptoZoo project. And that actually kind of means even Logan Paul is feeling like there's a shadow of possibility that he could get convicted of fraud. Which means the jury might look at that and say, so if Logan Paul sees a possibility that he could get convicted of fraud, it's reasonable for CoffeeZilla to have thought the same thing. And that would get in the way of Logan Paul being able to prove to the jury that CoffeeZilla made these alleged statements with actual malice. And actual malice is an essential element that Logan Paul has to prove in order to win this case. And so that would mean Logan Paul loses the defamation case.
And it was this next part, she talks about how Logan might have only sued Coffee because Coffee reported him to the FBI and he was really mad about that. Because if you remember, he actually took an entire year to sue him.
And remember, Paul waited well over a year after CoffeeZilla came out with his 3-part series before suing him for defamation. He waited long enough that the statute of limitations already passed to be able to sue over those original videos. So he had to find other follow-up statements CoffeeZilla made to sue him over those statements instead. It can definitely make that look like Logan Paul wasn't planning to sue CoffeeZilla until he found out that he was a whistleblower and decided to retaliate against him for blowing that whistle.
Right, that makes a lot more sense because apparently we thought that Logan was so mad at Coffee because he exposed him and destroyed his reputation online. But this adds a new element that Logan was really pissy because he literally outed him to the feds. Definitely seems like something a petty billionaire would do, sue the guy who snitched on him. So here's what people are saying. It's a very hard sell to claim that suing the whistleblower in the criminal investigation of you isn't retaliation. Okay, if anything, this makes Coffee Lovezilla look way more badass than he shows himself. Like, he's doing some epic shit behind the scenes. This is brave as hell. The whole phone call about Logan Paul trying to find out what the guy did with the money is all fake. Of course, if you're trying to hide the fact that you maybe have defrauded people in some way, you're not gonna just call your business partner and be like, hey, just act like I'm confronting you and you're really sorry about this whole thing. I didn't realize CoffeeZilla himself was the whistleblower. I'm genuinely scared for him, honestly. Yeah, you gotta keep an eye out for the Logan Paul hitman. Now click this video so the FBI finally taps Logan in the ass. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.